Welcome back to the lineup here on Radio DePaul, Chicago's College Connection. Obviously, we were just talking a lot of Bears and Seattle Seahawks. Now we're going to dive into some Bulls who we haven't touched on, hit back on the Blackhawks, and also touch on some Chicago baseball with Joe Ostrowski of 670 The Scores. He's an update anchor as well as a host. Joe, are you with us?
I'm there, guys. It's a pleasure to be on the lineup. How's Russell Baxter, my guy? I've talked to him a few times on my show.
Yeah, Russell's a really good guy, and he also gave us a really good stat, too, that 8 teams who have scored 500 more points in an NFL season have yet to win a Super Bowl.
I mean, the more you look at it, and I think another interesting stat is, of the last 16 number one defenses in the league to make it to the Super Bowl, 13 of the 16 have ended up winning the Super Bowl. So as much as we talk about passing league, you have to have that elite quarterback. When you talk about getting to the Super Bowl, once you're there, I think you need to worry about a defense a whole lot more than we pay lip service to. And it is it's a 2-week period for me. I don't get depressed, but I'm like, damn, Super Bowl's over. I miss football, but we have the Combine in 2 weeks.
Yeah, no, I agree about that. Of course, Tom, being a big Seahawks fan, is also a little depressed, but he does have the Matt Hasselbeck jersey on today.
No, yeah. I think you brought up a great point, though. You know, this pass-happy league with all the rule changes and stuff making it harder to play pass defense, I think the Seahawks proved you can still play physical, smash-mouth defense and dominate teams. So,
yeah, I think the big takeaway there, guys, I'm sorry to cut you off there, but I think the big takeaway is, and you just said it, we keep talking about when you talk about matchups in the NFL, people mostly just talk about the quarterbacks to start with, and that's usually where they end up and where they think a team's going to go or how far they're going to go. It's just all about the quarterbacks. And I'm not saying if you have a great quarterback, you can't win that way. Of course you can. We've seen it in the past. But, you know, Joe Flacco last year, it's about getting that hot quarterback, stepping up at the right time. And there are multiple ways to win. That's really what I'm looking at. You can have a great defense and win. You can have a great offense and win.
You know, and Tom and I were talking about this last year in our show, and he brought it up to me right before the playoffs started or during the playoffs that I had mentioned that when the Baltimore Ravens had gotten in the playoffs, that Ray Lewis was going to be a spark plug for the Ravens, and it carried the Ravens all the way to the Super Bowl. And we saw with the Seattle Seahawks, not with one player, but that team was a team defense, and they played off of each other, whether it was the pass rush, and then they played off the cornerbacks with the tight coverage. It was incredible to watch, and Tom and I were again talking about the true NFL fans. You have to love the Super Bowl, and fans complaining about it being a bad game is just ridiculous.
Oh, come on. I mean, it's really hard when you have 2 weeks of build-up, and the Super Bowl is such an event. How often do you walk away and say, yeah, that was great? It's going to be a little disappointing for most people. That's just the way it is. And there's a lot of luck involved. People have been breaking down over the last few days about how they built this team. John Schneider, their GM, did an unreal job. But again, so much luck involved. You talk about fifth-round picks, Richard Sherman and Cam Chancellor. And people say, well, they're going to have to pay those guys. Sure, they will. But you look at that organization and you have so much confidence in what they've done. Who's to say that their depth, the backups they have already or that they're going to get, because they've made so many more moves than any other team in the NFL by far, who's to say they're not going to be able to step up? And they're not going to lose much for next year.
No, absolutely. And you talk about their backups. Look at a guy like Byron Maxwell. I mean, he stepped in and played almost as good as Sherman did. And this is a guy who was coming into the season the fourth cornerback. It's unbelievable. And you mentioned John Snyder and Pete Carroll. You got to have the confidence that these guys can go anywhere in this draft and find players that people write off, and just like that, boom, turn them into serviceable guys, and in a lot of cases, above average talent. So it definitely these guys are really doing something special in Seattle, and I think you're going to see a lot of teams around the league trying to mimic it.
Oh, well, yeah, certainly. That's what happened every single year. A lot of people had Seattle winning this game, but nobody saw it happening in this fashion. And then you spin it home, you take it to the Bears, and you take a look, and Phil Emery's at the podium at the end of the year. Okay, we have 6 picks as of right now. We are going to rebuild this defense through the draft. We're going to get younger. We're going to get better through the draft. Is it a little unfair to judge him on 2 drafts? Yeah, it is, but that's all we have so far. Okay, so he's going to rebuild that defense, which can stop the run, Worst team ever in Bears history to do that. Most amount of total yards given up in Bears history by a defense. And through 2 drafts, I like Phil Emery. I like his aggressiveness. But I don't have a whole lot of faith as far as drafting goes, because the best defensive player so far that he's drafted is Isaiah Friday.
And that you're not saying much with that draft pick, because then again, where has that brought this Bears defense? Again, we talked about it with Russell, again, second to worst in the NFL to the Minnesota Vikings. But let's dive into some relevant Chicago sports right now, talking about the Bulls, who are playing right now. And the Bulls, with the bounce back, went on Tuesday night against Phoenix. Carlos Boozer with a big bucket late in the fourth quarter, and he, of course, called out Tom Thibodeau and the rest of the coaching staff for not being able to play in the fourth quarter, being on the bench. But my question for you is, why didn't he mention this 2 years ago? Because Carlos Boozer has been on the bench in the fourth quarter for many games. I mean, you see Taj Gibson in so much.
That was everybody's first reaction. Well, okay, hey, Booze Crews, wake up. This has been going on since Tibbs came here from the Boston Celtics. Yeah, you're terrible on defense. That's why you're not on the fourth quarter. This is dawning on you. Here's the reason. He's not an idiot. He hears all the noise. He knows what's going to happen. Most likely he's going to be amnestied at the end of the season. I really think it was just a message to the other GMs, other front offices in the league that say, hey, I'm not checking out here. I want to be on the court. And I'm okay with him saying it. It was just a little odd because you don't hear players under Tibbs just break rank, just take a direct shot at the head coach to the media. You just have not seen that, because we've always seen, since he's gotten here, every player buy in, and he squeezes everything he can out of those players. And I'm fully convinced you take any player off this Bulls roster, you throw them on another roster, they're not going to be as productive. There's just no way. So it was a message to other teams. He knows he's not going to be here next season. That's all that was.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point, though. You really don't see that with the Thibs coach team. You never see dissent in the ranks, but it was interesting, though, that Thibs sort of let him, obviously gave him some time there in the late fourth quarter, and Booze delivered with a big bucket. But looking forward after the big win against Phoenix, looking forward to the game tonight against Golden State. Obviously, with Stephen Curry and the high-powered offense out west. How are they going to stop Curry? Is it going to be Butler on him? Is it going to be Captain Kirk? Because obviously Dragic was able to get 24 points the other night. Curry could go for much more if the Bulls aren't careful. What do you think they do?
Yes, there's no question about that. I mean, if you were to have let's say you throw everybody in a pot, like it's fantasy draft, and of course your stars are going to go early. But Steph Curry would be a guy that goes off the board very easy. Very quickly. He's going to be a superstar in this league. Stop him? No, nobody's going to stop him. But yeah, I do like. I think they'll use some Jimmy Butler, and that's interesting. In a year where it's again, unfortunately, all about the big picture. What's going to be next? Because you don't have Derrick Rose. They're just stuck in the middle. They're going to draft in the middle of the first round. And maybe twice, because it looks like Charlotte might make the playoffs, so they might have 2 picks in the first round. They're not going to find a superstar there. So it's all about the Carmelo talk. And in that, you have a guy with Jimmy Butler who took a big step in year 2, because you bring him up. But in year 3, defensively, he's still there. But offensively, his game has gone backwards this year.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Again, especially against the Clippers, and in that stretch, Jimmy Butler was not playing well offensively. But you mentioned the Carmelo Anthony aspect to this offseason, and I think that's what we're going to hear until Carmelo Anthony does go somewhere. And then throwing Taj Gibson back into the conversation. Gibson was brought back into the conversation with the NBA trade deadline, and people were talking about could Taj Gibson be traded with a pick for Carmelo Anthony. Do you believe the Bulls could make that happen? And would the Knicks say yes to that? Obviously, it's a tough question, because then Boozer gets the fourth quarter minutes then.
I don't see them making a trade for Carmelo Anthony before the deadline coming up on the 20th. What I'm going to be looking for is the talks involving Taj Gibson, because if they're able to move Taj's contract, and that's what they would have to do to be able to free up a max slot for Carmelo Anthony for next season. If Taj goes, that means through back channels they've heard stuff that Carmelo Anthony wants to become a Bull. It's 1 in 3 shots here. because a lot of fans are sick and tired of, okay, every year we're expecting them to do something big in the summer, and they end up striking out. But you have to put yourself in that position to be able to make that move. Carmelo Anthony's going to be in New York. He's going to be with the Bulls, or he's going to be with the Lakers. And the next thing is, of course, he can make $30 million more if he stays there. Does he want to win? That's the question. So we'll find out. I mean, him and Rose together in that backcourt, that would be a lot of fun here. And then all of a sudden you're in the mix. And you don't know what's happening with the future of the Heat either. Like their whole season consistently, it just hinges on Dwayne Wade's health. We know how great LeBron is, but that Pacers team is damn good. I think Indiana could take them out this year.
I agree with that. I think Indiana is playing unbelievable basketball right now, and that Heat team, like you mentioned, Dwayne Wade, he's not a young guy anymore. I mean, he played at college, so he didn't come out of high school like LeBron did, and so he put a couple of those extra years on the knees, they really add up. But you mentioned Carmelo and D Rose in that backcourt or whatnot. I have trouble seeing those two working well together because these are two guys that need the ball in their hands to be effective. Obviously, Melo added a nice post-up game. We saw that last year in New York. He started taking the ball down low a little more, and it was super effective. I think for him and Rose to work together, it's going to have to be something similar to that because Rose is a guy off the ball. I don't know, unless his three-point shot somehow becomes Steph Curry-like or something. Not quite that good, but serviceable. I think it's going to be tough to get enough shots around for both those guys.
I understand that point. Let me throw a couple questions at you guys. Do you think that? And this is just, it might be me being a little hopeful. Do you think Carmelo Anthony at this stage in his career can be a better player under Tibbs?
I personally think he can, just because you look at the guys who have come over here in Tibbs' system, and they picked up the defense very well. And you look at Luol Deng after Tom Thibodeau came over to the Bulls, and Luol Deng has become a much better player, not only on the offensive end. I think that's where Tom Thibodeau has become an underrated offensive coach too. But on the defensive end too, I think Luol Deng has picked up his game on defense.
No, absolutely, and I think if it was going to be anybody to turn Carmelo, sort of not around, but get him to refine his game a little more. And I think Tibbs is one of the few guys, maybe Popovich another one of the few guys that could do it. So I think that's a good point that Tibbs will could definitely hammer some things into Melo's mind.
I mean, Carmelo's not a perfect player. We all understand that, but I do think it's all about Tibbs being able to get him to buy in. And we had Joe Colley on the show the other night, and I thought he brought up a great point. A lot of Bulls fans very frustrated with Derrick Rose, not only the injuries, which, that's not even his fault, but that he's been vocal and he just won't get off of this, that he's not going to recruit players. Come and play if you want. I'd love to have you, but he absolutely refuses to recruit other players. And that's a big part of this right now. And with Tibbs being involved in USA basketball, that's your recruiter right there. There it is. If for a player that wants to be serious and wants to win, Tibbs is right there for you. He loves everybody on this team that works hard. That's why I love Luol Deng, Jimmy Butler, and Taj Gibson, Joakim Noah so much. And that's your recruiter now. It's not the superstar Derrick Rose. It's your head coach.
And that's the funny thing. You bring up Derrick Rose being a recruiter, and we heard everything last year, Luol Deng, and obviously Deng not being on the Bulls anymore, but Joakim Noah really backing Derrick Rose, and that's where I'm thinking Derrick Rose was trying to back Luol Deng and Joakim Noah, saying, I don't want these guys out of town. And we heard that back in November, and then all of a sudden the staff and the upper management pulls the trade. And are they saying to Derrick Rose that this is not his team anymore? Obviously they gave I was thinking that the Bulls made a great move back in the day, or not, I shouldn't say back in the day, after they made it to the Eastern Conference Finals and after he won the MVP, give him the $100 million contract. But what did he do? He won the MVP award. He got the team to the Eastern Conference Finals. He didn't win an NBA title. So is this team really taking away the power that they gave to him, and are they swiping it right back?
No, I don't think so. And I wasn't mad at Derrick when he did say that, because the way I just look at it, he's backing his guy. He's backing his friend. He's backing his teammate. That's really what he had to do there. I don't look at it wrestling with power type stuff. I don't. It's tough without knowing the inner workings. But I don't think Derrick is the third party involved in the already infighting going on between Tibbs and Gar Forman.